We can't finish off the 2025 Bassmaster Elite Series season without the final Clunn-Clusion and the final Jake's Take of the season. This week, Rick Clunn and Jake Latendresse join me on...
I'm Bob Cobb for the Bassmaster. Welcome to Mercer.
Welcome one, welcome all, friends, family, freeloaders, fishing freaks, and of course you, my humpers. Happy hump day to all of you, and welcome into the Awkwardly Honest fishing podcast that goes by my last name, which is Mercer. This is the 229th edition of the Mercer podcast, and I thank you for spending a little bit of your week with me here on this show. There's lots going on in the fishing world. There's lots to talk about, but I got to be honest. I got to go fishing. We are shooting shows right now, and I'm late to leave, so we can talk about that down the road. We got a great show here this week. We have Jake Latendresse joining us with Jake's Take. We have the legendary Rick Clunn with his Clunn-Clusion of the 2025 Bassmaster Elite Series season. So pop popcorn, kick back, relax, put your runners on if you're going for a walk, however you choose to listen. It's coming at you now. Without further ado, let's jump right into it and kick things off with the legendary Rick Clunn. Rick Clunn and his Clunn-Clusion is back in your life. And Rick, we had a fabulous final event of the season.
Yeah, you did. And it's really reinforces, I should reinforce to the audience, the fans, that there's still other ways to catch them. And lacrosse, Mississippi River has always illustrated that, and just other ways to catch them there. You know, I mean, there's just so many ways. And of course, my favorite part of it there was the topwater bite that was going on. Oh. You know, whether it was, and people were throwing different types too. Of course, the frog dominated. But at the same time, you know, there was other, you know, walking baits and that type of thing going on, and that's such a neat bite. It never gets old. Yeah. You know, it's one of the most primal, basic things in fishing that all fishermen at some level understand, that how important the relationship between predator and prey is, and the proper order of predator versus prey, and always the topwater bite illustrates that as well as anything, because all predators, during certain times they're going to actively and aggressively feed, but what directs that? And that's usually laws of nature. In other words, they're not going to kill the biggest, toughest buffalo in the whole herd. They're going to go out and try to find one that's ill, sick, old, weak, whatever. And that's the one, and that's the design of nature, is to eliminate the weak so that herd stays strong. And bass are no different. And when they see a topwater, even though they go, golly, I'm not really hungry, but the laws of nature say, I got to kill it. You know, I got to remove it. And that's so neat that you can generate strikes, and big strikes, because the bigger the bass, the more they obey those laws. You can generate strikes when they're really not actively feeding. And you really, you know, tournament fishermen are notorious for just doing everything they can to generate a strike anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody, no matter, is it childhood? Is it just like everybody? I think the topwater bite, I don't care what it is. It just seems more special. Do you think that's because, you know, I think a lot of people got addicted to this sport. I mean, I remember my very first, like, one of the fish that I remember, like, from my childhood, ate a jitterbug. And I just remember, I can smell the morning that all happened. Like, it's so vivid to me. Do you think that's why we all love topwater as much as we do?
I think, yeah, we're visual creatures. Our sense of sight is our strongest one, and it's the one we respond to no matter what in life. It's We look for the things that really stimulate us visually. And that's certainly a strike on a topwater. And that was me. My first bass I ever caught on artificial lure was on a red and white Lucky 13, sitting there doing nothing. And I'm sitting there playing with rocks standing on the bank. And all of a sudden there's an explosion. And I look up and I see my very first green fish with that red and white in slow motion, that red and white bait on its mouth, and literally scares me. It was so powerful. And from that day on, I've been doing what I've done for all these years. I've been chasing them and chasing those little green crazy fish.
Yeah, it's wild. So what stood out from you in this tournament? I mean, great topwater action, but were there any moments that stood out for you?
Really, again, what stood out for me was the lack of science of culling. Okay, and you know who brought that? And Larry Nixon's the one that brought that back to my mind, because the best statement I ever heard in my whole career about culling was Larry Nixon made. And Larry Nixon was commentating this tournament. And it was like looking through fishing with the world of fishing that I've lived in, and looking at it through his incredible wisdom. And all anglers that like him have that. And I really, he expressed it, but that wisdom, the best statement ever made about culling was, Larry one time sat down and he had two little fish that were close, and he did not even do what everybody does now, weighs them and puts them on balance beams, and he made this statement, and I'll never forget it. He says, "Why am I worried about ounces when I need pounds?" And he just flung one of them over the side, And nowadays everybody's worried about ounces, and there is a time to worry about ounces, but most of the time we have this internal computer, this clock, that we know what we need, even though we're not at weigh-in 90% of the time. We know we need a 4-pounder or a 3-pounder or something. And yet here we are doing this teeter-totter stuff for ounces. And I'm not saying ounces don't make a difference at times. Certainly they do. But that's the key, is you got to know when that time is. And Larry knew when that time was, when he wasn't wasting time culling these little fish to gain 1 or 2 ounces. He knew he needed pounds. And so I led that tournament watching everybody, because there was a lot of culling going on, which nowadays there is in tournaments. And I go, I don't know, has there ever been an article done called The Art of Culling? Because nobody is culling correctly. Nobody. And part of it's correct, part of it's incorrect. Part of timing is and timing is one of the biggest things, is when should you be culling? When should you be worried about pounds versus ounces? And what technique is the best for the fish as well as for your outcome? And you've heard me before. I hate watching these guys weigh those fish. There is a time to do it though. But I'm not any better at it. I have my method of doing it. But now after watching this whole year and everybody in this culling process evolving, and different guys doing it different ways, and I don't know who's doing it correctly. And I would love to see somebody who's more scientific than me sit down and analyze all the methods that's being used, and write an article on the art of culling, and how to do it and when to do it, and all of that, because it's not being done correctly right now. And it's costing. I'm just talking about the tournament angler. It's costing the tournament angler because he's doing it incorrectly. And these guys are good at it, but they're still not doing it right. I just love to see. Have you ever seen an article on the art of culling?
No.
I haven't either.
I didn't even think they were doing it incorrectly until you said it.
Oh yeah, I mean they're not doing all of it incorrectly, but I can sit there and watch how many casts these guys are wasting with that little bobby bib weigh system there, and it's good. Don't get me wrong. There's a time for it, but I just don't know that they're using it at the correct time, or that they should be using it all the time.
So your theory is put them in the well and cull call later, or like what?
My theory's not right either. Part of it is just like part of theirs is. I'd like to see somebody sit down and really do. Everything's about analytics nowadays in sports. Yeah. Somebody needs to do the analytics on that. In other words, when is it good to go for the first down on fourth down?
Yeah.
You see in that more and more. Analytics now is turning the sports into changing the sport. I would love to see the analytics on the proper way to call and timing wise. And timing is really the key. Late in the day and you think you're close, the announcers may play a role. But if you know and most of us know when golly, I need another big one. Well, You shouldn't be told, you should not ever cast you lose at the end of the day because you're looking for another ounce or two. It's going to cost you the tournament.
So
that's what I observed, and that's strange. I never know what I'm going to see in these events, but that's really what stood out in this event. And being the last one of the year, and being Larry Nixon, I love Larry Nixon's comment about, "Dang, that looks like David Fritz." I forget the angler. He was going around and around and around the boat trying to land this particular fish, and they're using, little tiny rods and light rod rods. But David Fritz was using 10-pound tests most of the time, too. That's why he run around the boat. But when he brought that comment up, because David used to drive me nuts how long he fought a fish.
The first question I ever asked David Fritz when he joined the Elite Series, and I had been like, this was a question, some questions you think of, but this was a question that 12-year-old me had wanted to ask him because I would watch him walk around the boats. And I would watch him go hand over hand around his light post. And I remember being 12 years old and screaming at the TV, "It's noon. Take your damn light post out."
I know. It's all these little things. And, we evolve, we get better, but we still do some really silly stuff.
Something that came up during that tournament that I thought was unique, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it. Pat Schlopper won the event, had a giant final day, fished an almost perfect tournament, if you ask me, just the way he was, the way he managed his fish, the way he adjusted on the final day. It was really amazing to see. But there was times where you were clear that he has won this tournament, unless some magic happens with the guys below him. But he had no idea, and he still thought he hadn't won that tournament. And then it became a conversation of, well, should you know? Do you like it that anglers do not know? Or would you like a scoreboard?
I think there's a beauty to that. When I beat Chris Johnson at St. John's the first year they fished, I didn't think I'd won that tournament. I was trying to break 100 pounds.
Yeah.
That's all I was doing that day. I was trying to break 100 pounds because I didn't think I'd catch that kid because he was fishing the same area I was. He was catching a really nice bag every day, and he just had to catch a nice bag. He didn't have to catch a giant bag. And so it never entered my mind that I was going to win that tournament. And there was, for me, the individual, there was an incredible beauty to that. Because it was just me doing it for the why I wanted to do it. And you want to win, but that sometimes just carries too much weight with it, and it carries too much thinking to it. Where I was just thinking about, okay, I was talking to my camera guy. Okay, I caught that first 9 something, and I go, "How much you think I got?" Well, he says you got over 30 now. I said, "Yeah, I need 35. I needed 35 even to hit 100 pounds." And I said, "Golly, that means I got to catch another giant because I got to cull a 5-pounder, And of course, I ended up almost doing it. Ended up with 34.14, something like that, 2 ounces short. But no, getting back to him, and I think it had a little bit to do with who he thought he had to beat. I thought, because that was one of the things you see more and more now that you never used to see. There was 2 local Wisconsin boys that knew how to fish that water. And he knew how to fish it. But he also knew his buddy knew how to fish it. The other Wisconsin angler that led for, I think,
Yeah,
on the
Caleb.
first 3 days. Yeah, the first 3 days. And he knew the water he was fishing. I knew the water Chris Johnson was fishing. I knew, if I'm catching them like this, he's probably catching them. So, no, it doesn't surprise me. There's times when you know, and there's times when you know you need another fish. And that's just an incredible internal clock that most anglers that do this as much as we do have. And and again, well, how many years has he been fishing now?
Who, Slopper or Chris?
Yeah,
Slopper. This is
2 or 3.
It's no. I mean, this will be his 5th classic he's made. So I think he's sixth year, I believe.
Yeah. Well, and that takes time to really start to have that internal clock and the beauty of it. And but I think did Caleb change water the final day?
No, but the water kind of changed on him. The water dropped, and it definitely, things changed.
Okay.
There was a cold front.
Right. I thought he was fishing in that upper pool too. See, I didn't know. I did see in the camera they looked like he was fishing the lacrosse pool, but for some reason,
he was fishing the lacrosse pool, but he was fishing undercuts where Pat wasn't.
Yeah, Pat was up in the upper lake though, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that the locals could not used to win tournaments, but now they've learned how to fish tournaments, multi-day tournaments. Locals fish a lot of one-day events, but they don't fish many multi-day events. And they don't really are not very good at managing their fish. And when they've lived on that water their whole life, they're really not good at managing. They want to fish every spot they've ever caught a 5-pounder in their whole life. And you can't do that. They got to, figure out, okay, here's the current conditions, here's the current patterns. I know the spots that should work under these conditions. I know the spots that should work under this water level. I know the spots that should work under this wind direction. And that's where what you saw happen with Slopper. He really zeroed in on his intimate knowledge of that body of water. And yet, he didn't go wacky nuts like a lot of locals do.
Yeah.
Today's high-tech fishing world can be a real pain in the neck, especially if you're running the wrong mounts. Beatdown Outdoors, they bring the graph to you. And they support this podcast and care enough about you to make this a short ad read. Check out Beatdown Outdoors. Now back to the show.
Chris Johnson won his 2nd AOY in a row. Pretty fun. When you look at the guys who have done it, Roland Martin, Guido Hibton, and Kevin Van Dam, the only people to ever win back-to-back AOYs. I mean, Kevin won 4 in a row. So, Chris, you're not even close to. You got to keep swinging. But that's a pretty impressive feat in itself.
It is. It's one that I apologize. I do not relate to.
Yeah.
I have no relation to the Angler of the Year because I would not be here if I had gone for Angler of the Year. I knew that. And the times have changed. But back then, Angler of the Year was meaningless. And plus it did not reflect who was Angler of the Year. Now it's gotten better now because in the old days, Angler of the Year was not how good you were. It was how good all your buddies were, how good all your friends were. Every tournament, and that's why I dominated the Classic, because they depended on every tournament having your local people help them. And that was okay. Now, it was okay back then. And slowly the rules changed and tried to eliminate a lot of that, where now Angler of the Year is more a reflection of your ability. Not completely, not still. And that's why I will never put it above the Classic. And a lot of people will say the Classic. And the Classic is not a total reflection anymore. Back when I was fishing, you didn't know where the heck you were going.
Yeah.
So you had to figure it out. You couldn't get help. Now that's changed too. So they've both kind of become very similar in that regards now. That, people are going to maximize what legal help they can get for both events. And I still find that unfortunate because I've always, on this idealist, think when you win, it should be you won.
Yeah,
nobody else had a hand in it. But that's not the way things work.
Anything else stand out for you from that event?
Just like I said, the variety of ways that you can fish there.
Yeah.
And the fun watching them do it, and that still exists and will continue to exist if the organizations continue to be smart about it. They know the bodies of water like the Sabine and like La Crosse, and there's others that you can get. You're going to make people be more versatile, and they need to do that. You just can't schedule all one style. If it was all one flipping style, or of course we know the style everybody talks about now. But even that style, the one thing I noticed this year about it, okay, now that style I'm talking about, electronics, is evolving. That's what I really, really saw this year. And I thought it would, and it is. It's definitely evolving. You're starting to see, like at Lake Fork, I mean, they used it. Everybody was using it, but they were catching them a lot of different ways than they have in the past. And they're going to be forced to do that. The other thing is you see Trey McKinney at St. Clair fishing in a crowd, and yet he's taken that technique to a level that nobody else has. And it's beautiful to watch that and try to figure out what he's doing that they're not doing, because so it's evolving. I enjoy that even about that technique. You're seeing more and more tools being brought to play with that forward facing, and it's evolving from the fish's point of view. I mean, they're getting more and more aware. What are 50 boats doing out here in the middle of the bay, here at St. Clair, and they're aware of it. So you've got to evolve and figure out, better ways to do it, like the Japanese do.
Yeah. Well, it was an amazing event, and you have an amazing event ahead of you now. We're recording this, and tomorrow morning you're leaving for Lake Mead.
Yeah, I'm leaving for one of my all-time lakes that I love and always will, because it's the one lake you as an angler could never lie about who you were. It would not accept a lie. And a lot of lakes do. And that lake would not, because it was never going to be the same lake in a year. It changed characters every year. It's like you had it's an old friend, but every year it's a different friend. And I always considered it, if I wanted to know, could I still do it? I'm going out and fish Lake Mead in the summer. And if you can still do it there, you can still do it. And it's not true everywhere we go. And so I'm looking forward to it. And it's definitely going to be a different friend this time, because it's about as low as I've ever fished it.
Yeah. Why is that lake different than others? Like what? Why
It's a fair lake. It's very fair. There's no local advantage. And it's never the same lake when you go back. And I'm talking about, it can be 55 feet different from the time you get to fish the year before. Or one year I won it, it was as full as it's ever been in its history. And I was fishing in the lower end of the Grand Canyon. I wasn't even fishing Lake Mead when I won it. I was fishing where that Havasupai bridge goes out over the canyon, and you can look down through this glass circular bridge out there. You couldn't even see the lake. And I've been to it, and now I can see the canyons I was fishing. And now the coyotes and the burros, that they've been returned back to them. You can't even get up the river anymore where I was fishing. So that was the beauty. And then one year I won it down in the lower end, burning in a spinnerbait in the middle of July in 110, 15 degree weather.
Wow.
And then the next year, I mean, it was never exactly the same. And there's never, how so many lakes have dominant areas that you better be in those areas if you're going to win. And most of our big lakes, Gunnersville, and I'm not going to name them all, but they have an area that you better be in. There's one or two areas you better be in, or you're not going to win the tournament. Mead's never been that way.
Well, I wish you luck out there, and I thank you for all of your Clunn-Clusions. They add a lot to this show, and I love them.
Well, thank you. Thank Larry for me. I really enjoyed him. Nixon.
He was great. He was great. I loved him earlier this year when he did the Open. He was great there. A lot of wisdom. I'd like to listen to you two together.
Yeah, Larry and I have always been able to. Kevin and I can't talk. Okay, even now.
What?
Without? Well, no, because Kevin he competes in everything. Okay. He does. You've been around, Larry. He competes in everything, and he probably going to win. So I can't. There's no casual conversation there. It's a competitive conversation. You're arguing over some technique or something. Larry and I can talk about things and discuss things, and disagree and agree. And it's really kind of informative, just like me listening to him. I was amazed by just some of his observations, because I can see them. Not everybody can see what he sees,
Yeah.
and that's kind of neat looking at it through his eyes.
Yeah. No, I'm laughing because you're right about Kevin. He once told me on vacation that I was building a fire raw. We needed to build a fire for s'mores, and the fire was burning. The s'mores were getting cooked. Yeah. And he's like, no, Mercer, you got to, I did it wrong, evidently.
No, you understand. You understand. And I don't mean it as a criticism. That's just his nature.
No, and I think that's why Kevin has been such a dominant competitor, because if you look at it, and it's weird, I go through these aha moments where this last tournament we were talking, I think it was me and Swindle were talking about the difference you feel when you're on that invincible feeling, like those Angler of the Year seasons. When I watched Aaron when he could just not be beat, and he was just always like, they're there. Like the split second decisions that he always was certain on. And then when he wasn't catching them, when Aaron had a rougher season, he'd be like, oh, you think they're there? Like he would second guess himself. Kevin never second guesses himself on anything. So I literally think that's, you know what I mean? Like he lives in that headspace.
No, you're right.
Yeah, it's wild. Well, this has been a wonderful Clunn-Clusion. Thank you very much, Rick Clunn.
It's good to be with you, sir.
All right, now I'm going to switch my hat, and we're going to quickly do something else.
Okay.
It's so funny, that Kevin story, because it is so true. And I do believe that is, like, I've honestly really thought about it. I think that's why he's the competitor that he is, because he never doubts. Like, and you see him when it doesn't work, and that's very confusing to him. Like, he can't accept that. I didn't think about that right. It's funny. It's funny. All right, so this is just for official and unofficial. So it's the season's over. I'm going to just say, what are your top 3 moments that stand out for me for 2025? And this can be 5 to 10 minutes. Doesn't have to be very long at all. Are you good?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. Rick Clunn, hard to believe that the 2025 Elite Series season is over, but it was a great season. Had a lot of great moments. What were the top 3 moments that stood out to you?
That's difficult because my memory's not that great at certain things. But I'm going to start with the last one because of Larry Nixon's presence. That stood out for me. It's so neat to be able to look at through that world I've spent my whole life in through another individual's eyes that has done the same thing. Yeah. And I so enjoyed his takes on certain things. Like, I forget the young angler who was running around and around the boat of course he's doing it probably with 4-pound test line and the spinning rod. And Larry finally made this statement, boy, that reminds me of David Fritz. And the minute he said that, it just hit me. I started laughing because I used to just get so tickled, upset, disturbed by how much he ran around the boat. And that's just, I had no right doing that. But I just going, David, see, I'm one of those, okay, the bass, if he's the bass, black bass, I'm talking about black bass, I'm not going to talk about smallmouth, it will never have control. Okay, I will never allow him control. Okay, and that was my rule of thumb in fishing. If he's really big, I'll give him one run at the boat, and then he's coming in the boat one way or another. But he's not getting more than one run. And then most of them don't even get that one run. But when he brought that up, and David just, even when I was watching David on camera, I'd go, I'm stressing out, David, you know. But in David's defense, he was a master at what he did. He used 10-pound test line. When I'm saying he's coming in the boat, 90% of the time I was using 17-pound mono or above. David was using 10 pounds, something or the other. And so, he was going to have to, and David most of the time had a decent fish on.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. The other one still has to be Brandon Card catching that big one on topwater. And I believe that was at Fork, wasn't it? On the spoon. Or was that someplace?
10 killer.
That was 10 killer, wasn't it? The lake was high.
Yeah.
That's what was throwing me off. I knew the lake was high. Okay. Yeah. But just how Brandon's been doing that a long time.
Yeah.
And yet I could see the childlike love he had for what he did. He hadn't reduced it to a result, an outcome. It was just a pure enjoyment of, like we have talked about before, the beauty of watching it hit the topwater and then weeding it through all the tangle of stuff and getting it out, and him just being happy.
Yeah.
So all too often, unfortunately, competition, not just fishing, we're not unique, but the competition steals the happiness. And I even know when I used to win a tournament, Ray Scott would get so upset because I would not show any emotion. And I could not show emotion until I woke up the next morning and I realized, and I knew it wasn't a dream. Because so many times I dreamed I won. And then I wake up and I say, oh, crud, I didn't win. So my emotion always came the next morning when I woke up and I knew it wasn't a dream. So that moment with Brandon was really, really kind of neat.
Yeah. That's the magic of fishing, I always say, because it doesn't matter. You can take the most serious executive out fishing that's like just focused on the moment they catch a fish. Like they can be serious. Like I've been on the water with people that are, not everybody's a spaz like me, but I'm sure you've had this experience where you have people that are super serious and have a lot on their plate, but the moment they catch a fish, nothing matters. They become giggling. Like, you know what I mean? Like it is truly a magic.
Oh, it is. It totally is. And that's the other thing about this year and watching and observing tournament. I've been doing this deal called Back in Time, where I've had a Bassmaster magazine in my office since 1974, or maybe a little before, actually. Yeah, a little before, actually. And I've got every one of them. So I went back and Melissa and I, and we started going back and just going through them and looking at certain things that stood out to me. And the one thing that hit me in the beginning, and still does, is how unpopular tournaments were with everybody. Okay. Conservation people, state people, locals, outdoor riders hated us. And it was because we were displacing them. We didn't realize that, but we were displacing them. We were becoming the expertise where they had been the expertise forever. And now all of a sudden the tournament angler, displaced them. So we weren't like, and so we got a lot of criticism. And a lot of it was deserved. And it was good criticism, especially the handling of the fish. But but now looking at it now, all that criticism, and we change them from not putting clips through their lips and from actually catch and release. It's some of the best things that has ever happened to fishing.
Yeah.
And it carried over beyond tournaments into just mainstream fishing society. And that was good, real good. The outcome, even though it's over time, and another good thing is that, catch and release, again, it's just everywhere. And you can still criticize it if you want, but it's fishing in this country is really good because of it. But the other thing is, I've always said, and I know you're the same way, one of the side effects of these tournaments that we go to, and I was thinking about it watching them, is all the places I would have got to go fish that I would have never seen in my life.
Yeah.
I would have never gone. Anglers, I just went to Leech Lake up in Minnesota. You'd think I've been to every lake on the continent, but I haven't. And seeing the rice fields in Leech Lake that are still being harvested by the Native American tribes, the old way. And but then realizing that it's just not us. We inspired a whole group of anglers in this country to go places and fish they would not have gone. They wouldn't have gone to Okeechobee. Most of them. They wouldn't have gone to St. Lawrence River.
Yeah.
Most of them. They wouldn't have gone to St. Clair. Most of them. And yet, because of tournaments and being you and all these organizations having it on television, they go, I'm going to put that on my bucket list. So that's such a neat thing, that people, because of the fishing tournaments, basically now expanded their fishing world, and they experienced it at a much deeper, and higher level. So, to me, that's really, I keep watching it this year, and I just kept going where they were at and how they were catching them. Pollinek at Okeechobee, and now this last one at Wisconsin, and even the Sabine River. Poor old Sabine River gets whacked on and beat on, and yet it's some of the best people there are, and it's real close to what I said about Lake Mead in one of our earlier shows, that it's one of the most fair places you can go.
Yeah.
It is. It's not going to treat somebody better than somebody else, and most of the time you're going to have to work, and you're going to have to figure them out, and you're going to have to fight a battle. So that's kind of, for me, what I kind of stuck out this year.
Yeah, those are all great points, and not shocked, but you always bring a different perspective to things, and a much needed and welcomed perspective.
Oh, there's many, many more. I mean, there's things to watching the evolution of these anglers and the young anglers, and how just watching things they're doing. Like I mentioned about Trey McKinney at St. Clair. He's moving to a level that others aren't moving to. I mean, he's had boats all around him. He's catching, he beats everybody by 5 pounds. He has that much better grade of fish.
Yeah.
And fishing the same water. Fishing is what everybody thinks is the same technique, but no, he's taking it to another level. There's a lot of things like that I really enjoyed watching.
When you think about it, that happened several times this year, which is so unique. Like to watch Trey McKinney outfish the competition while looking at them. The Brandon Palnick deal, to be in that little canal with 4 other boats, but clearly have figured out how to catch them better than those. And those other guys did well in the tournament, but Brandon clearly figured out. I mean, we had a lot of that this year, which is really cool.
No, and it shows you that they're not doing the same thing. And so you got to go, what are they doing? What have they discovered, and how have they taken it to the next level? And they have. I see it even in the local tournaments here. There's young anglers, they have taken it to another level. And they're barely out of high school. But in this season.
Isn't that the way it's meant to be, though? Like I would say, your generation took it to a higher level than the generation before you, and so on and so on.
Yeah, we were a little bit more fortunate than the current guys. So I only had 10 or 12 guys to beat.
Yeah.
And then you had a huge gap between that 10 or 12 and the next 180. There's a huge gap. That gap doesn't hardly exist anymore between the top 10 or 12. That next 180 have moved up, and there's a little gap maybe, but not near as big. So you got the locals are better, like we talked about at La Crosse. The young anglers are better. I mean, everybody has moved the bar up.
Well, you continue to move the bar up, and I thank you for your time, Rick Clunn.
Thank you, Dave.
Once again, Jake's Take is back in your life, and Jake, you got to spend. I mean, you want to talk about young talent? You got to spend the last event of the year with the reigning Rookie of the Year and the new reigning Rookie of the Year, both Rookies of the Year. The guy who handed it off and the guy who collected it. That's who you spent it with, obviously, Tucker Smith and Trey McKinney.
I can't say enough good things. There's lots to talk about because there was lots of pressure on both of them. And, Tucker, he had already won. I mean, the time I spent with Tucker was the last day. So he had already won the Rookie of the Year award, but he was still shooting. I mean, that was his fourth top 10 in his rookie season. Like, we talk a lot of chatter about Trey McKinney, but let's look at what Tucker Smith has done this year too. And when you start, peeling that away from everything else that we talk about at Bassmaster and the Elites, Tucker Smith had a phenomenal year.
Incredible year. I mean, he catches them everywhere he goes. Had incredible tournaments at the Opens, obviously high school, college, everything. I mean, Tucker's another one that's going to making a living in this sport hard on a lot of people.
Yeah, that was one of the things that he and I talked about. And ironically, something happened, when he got out to his first location in pool number 7. He was throwing a spook and literally throwing at a sand gap between two big grass lines where those big smallmouth were set up. And he and I were talking. We had a lot of fun on Sunday because I have now covered him in high school, college, opens, and and the bracket, and now in the elites. And the first time I met him was on Kentucky Lake, and he was catching smallmouth on a spook on a shallow sandbar, bomb casting for him. And ironically enough, on that Sunday that he where he started out, he was bomb casting a spook, catching big smallmouth. So it was he's a remarkable kid too. He's one of the most humble. He might be overly humble because he always puts other people in front of him. Even when you talk about him, on stage in front of him, he's always talking about his roommates and how well they've done. He was competing against his roommate, Paul Marks, for Rookie of the Year. And he always talks about them first and how remarkable they are and how well they do together as roommates and all that stuff. So, Tucker Smith deserves a lot of credibility and a lot of praise for not just the angler that he is and the angler that he has really been since high school. The kid won 3 straight national championships in high school, and then he qualifies for the elites. He's where he wanted to be. This is his dream, and he deserves a lot of credit, not only for being a great angler, but being a really great person. And his family, I'm pretty close to his family as well, and I love them. You can see why Tucker is who he is and all that stuff. And of course, we can say this again, his his mentor and really good friend when he was younger was Aaron Martins, and he gets all that influence from him.
Yeah. Has he, I mean, if you've covered him, how different is Tucker today compared to when you covered him in high school?
That's actually a really good question, because how long has it been now? 3, 4, 5, probably 5 or 6 years ago, which is crazy. 5 or 6 years ago, he's winning his third consecutive national title in high school. And it's not like this is some fishing derby. This is like, there's like 300 boats in these high school tournaments. It's extremely competitive. It's really, really difficult when you're on a lake, even as big as Kentucky Lake or Chickamauga or Gunnersville or wherever you are, to get into a cycle, because there's so many boats and there's only so many waypoints. And for Tucker to have done that was remarkable. And he's really the same exact person that he was the day that I met him 5 or 6 years ago. He hasn't changed a bit. That's a fact too.
That's wild too.
I think that's part of his personality, and I think that's part of one of the things I do think he is working on is his ability to speak on camera. That would be the one change that I would emphasize, that he has sort of come out of his shell. It was very obviously in high school. You don't know what to say. You're not accustomed to the media and the cameras and the lights and the profiling and all that stuff. And so he is trying, I know, he knows that in his business, he has to become a little more self-promoting, and he has to speak up for his sponsors, because at the end of the day, that's where they're making their money. So I would say that if he is coming out of his shell at all in anything, it would be that he's understanding better now how to market his products and to self-market in a humbling way.
Aftco not only makes incredible outdoor clothing, but they care about anglers with their 10% pledge. Aftco and the Shed family donate at least 10% of the company's profits to conservation and making fishing better. Now back to the show.
Yeah, he's a great kid, great family. Love seeing his parents at events. I actually ran into his parents in the airport when I was leaving.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so it was cool to see them, and it's cool to see through their eyes how emotional they get. Like, I mean, they're watching their kid chase their dream. I mean, that's, as a parent, that. Like, every parent knows that. Like, there's no better feeling on earth than seeing your kid find their way and chase a dream that they've wanted their whole life. So they're living in that, and
we
it's
talk
cool
about
to see.
that a lot. Yeah, when I'm around Drayton and Mallory, which is his father and mother, we talk about that a lot, because that's our common denominator between the two of us, other than me, knowing Tucker when he was younger in high school, and that's when I met them. So I've known them for the same amount of years, and I've really gotten to know them better this year. I mean, I've hung out with them in their Airbnb houses at tournaments, and we've had dinner or drinks together and all that. But this year, because of the frequency that they come and support, I mean, I don't know that they've come to every event, but they come to,
a bunch.
90% of them. Yeah, a bunch of them when they can. And our common denominator is talking about kids. And, I look up to them as parents because of the position they put Tucker in, or helped put Tucker in, to become the angler that he is, because that's what he always wanted to do. And as I recall, he was actually starting to play football, and he got injured. And when he got injured, that's when he really decided to start focusing in on fishing. And so that injury was a blessing for him. And when his parents and I talk about this, I'm always thinking about my children, like, okay, well, Tucker's at the top of his game right now. He's only, 22,
23, I think.
Yeah, 22, 23 years old. And I want my children, I want success for them at the level that Tucker's experiencing it, because to me, that's what life is all about. It's about focusing in on a goal, working really hard, putting your time in, and then accomplishing your goal. And when you do that, you're self-satisfied, you're confident, you continue to build on your life, and great things happen, especially when you're as humble as him. So I look up to Tucker, I look up to his parents, and he's a great role model already for kids that are up and coming in high school. He'll tell you every single time when you ask him, if he can do it, anyone can do it. And that's one of those things I love about him. He's just a great guy.
Great kid, and got a great future ahead of him. But some people don't wait till they're 23. Some people show up when they're 19 and now 20 years old and do not even understand what it's like to finish below second place in Angler of the Year. Trey McKinney, who you spent the majority of the week with 3 days with. Obviously, we know how it ended. Chris Johnson won Angler of the Year, but Trey McKinney, 2 years in a row to finish second twice is wild to me. What was your experience like with him in 3 days in the boat and 3 days when he probably had the most amount of pressure that we've ever seen him have on him?
And he actually mentioned that. He told me after day 3, when we were idling back in from the bridge, he told me that, he thought that he let the pressure get to him from the very beginning. He had a terrible practice. He felt like he was overly concerned about what's at stake, all the pressure that, in the public eye that he's gotten and the scrutiny and all that stuff. And he said, he flat out told me that he just let it get to him. But he still went down swinging, even on going into day 3, he was in 50th place. He got into day 3 on Saturday by the skin of his teeth, by what, an ounce or 2 ounces, something like that.
He was actually tied. He was tied.
That's right.
With,
that's right.
He was tied with Greg DePalma, I believe. Him and Greg DePalma were tied, and he had the tiebreaker, so he slides in there, and the Angler of the Year race is still alive. But he's a long shot. He's got to chase down the defending champion.
Bag.
Yeah, he had to have a giant day, but man, for a lot of the day, it felt like it was going his way. And as we've learned, Chris Johnson does. I always joke and say that Chris and Corey are just 2 droids put on Earth to take titles away from good, hard-working people like Bill Lowen. Nothing against Bill, but that's what they do. You thought that Chris was going to lose it, and then at the last minute, he catches a couple fish, and guess what? He won again.
KVD said something to me one time about, choking, like to win like he did his entire career. He said, you have to learn. It's not learning how to win. It's learning how not to choke. And that's what Chris Johnson does. He knows how. You hear it all the time in football. You got to, with let's say Nick Saban, like you and I were talking about before we started recording, you can't choke. You have to learn how to finish the game. And that's something that Chris Johnson and Corey too, but obviously Chris has become a closer. He's just like, he knows how to pitch in the 9th inning and shut the opposition down. That guy is a stick.
Yeah. And I think that it doesn't get enough credit in our sport. Like if you compare it to other sports, you've got, I think Chris is 36. He's the defending Angler of the Year. He's won at every single level that he competes at. Like he's won at FLW, won at Bass, you know what I mean? Like wins everywhere he's been. For Trey to even hang with him is amazing to me.
They went back and forth.
Where's Trey McKinney in 16 freaking years?
I know, dude.
Like you put 16 years of knowledge, and that's what's scary to me about Trey McKinney. He's 20 years old, and I know everybody wants to say, well, you can't, everybody's the same. He's still 20 freaking years old. Yeah. And to go back to back, like, I don't know what's more impressive, to have 2 Angler of the Year, like Chris to go back-to-back at Angler of the Year, I guess, is more impressive. But a 20-year-old to get second 2 years in a row is pretty freaking impressive as well.
And he let me tell you, I said this about spending 3 days with Randy Howell, and I'll say this about Trey McKinney or anybody. When you spend 3 days on a boat and with tournament pressure on your shoulders and all the things that come with that, the media, all that, you get to know someone pretty well. I'm not saying I know him better than anyone else. I would never say that. But it's like taking a road trip with someone, and you go 3 days in a row, you watch, and the way that I watch, I'm an observer as much as I am a cameraman, and I love bass fishing. I think it's one of the greatest sports on the planet, and I love it. I'm very passionate about it too. I'm passionate about my job. I'm passionate about who I'm with, making sure that I do my job for that person, whether it's, Trey McKinney or KVD or whoever it is. I'm watching. And one of the things that I will say about Trey McKinney, and I've defended him before, and I'll defend him probably till the day I die, unless he does something really silly, is he makes really, really good decisions on the water. And he did not have the fish. I don't know where Chris Johnson was, because I obviously wasn't in his boat. I think Carl Pennington was covering Chris Johnson throughout the tournament. And we stayed on as a production company. Just so you guys know, the viewers, we stayed on the Angler of the Year competitors, the top two, and we stayed on the Rookie of the Year anglers. And then we divided the other camera up amongst the top 6 anglers throughout the rest of the tournament. And so being with Trey, even though he was in 50th place, that was probably the most important day for him and for me to cover him, because he had it was a long shot, and that took a little pressure off of him. And I think that allowed him to make better decisions, because he wasn't worried about whether he was going to win or not. He actually felt like, hey man, I'm just going to go have fun. We'll see what Chris does. We'll see what I do, and let it develop and unfold as it will. So he just went fishing, and he went back to a spot where there was a current seam. He stopped at 2 different locations where he was going to catch. He had been catching 3.5 pound smallmouth on these current seams. And I love the upper Mississippi River, just like most of those anglers do. That is one of the funnest, most versatile and diverse habitats that we go to. And it is so much fun, because you just never know where you're going to stop and what's going to happen where you stop, whether the fish are reloading, whether you're running out of fish, whether you find a new spot within a spot. All those things can happen. So Trey hit these 2 current seams, like heavy current seams, close to the main channel of the river, and caught a few big smallmouth. And then he went directly to a spot where he and JT Tompkins had been sharing, not at the same time, but they were rotating in their cycles, and they were communicating with each other, boat to boat, face to face. Okay, I caught 15 pounds down there. I forget what they called it, but it's a location in the flats where the current had developed a really hard sandy seam, but the fish were along the edges of it, and the wind kept changing. So that it forced him to make decisions about his boat angle, how he was going to approach the seam. And then he narrowed it down during that day. On the last day, he narrowed this long seam, which was probably about, 300 or 400 yards long, in this grass along this sandy seam. And he narrowed it down to 2 different locations. And it reminded me a lot of the way Caleb Kufal won Guntersville a few years ago, where he's got this huge lake and he wins this tournament on 2 spots, essentially. Once he left his little golf course location, he went out to the main channel and was smacking those 3 and 5 pounders at Guntersville in 2 little spots, no bigger than the footprint of a large truck, and that's what Trey did. And that was when it really opened my eyes and made me feel good about my defense for Trey McKinney and defending his knowledge, his qualification, his decision-making factors, and the way he catches fish, because at that point in that shallow water, and it was muddy, the current was rolling, the wind was blowing the opposite direction, it was blowing his boat around, front-facing sonar wasn't a factor for him. He used it to find hard spots amongst the grass, but that was it. He was blind casting for the rest of the day, and he caught his fish. I mean, I forget what he had on Sunday, but like we talked about earlier, he made it competitive, and ultimately he didn't win Angler of the Year. He did get second, but he made it interesting, and he did it with skill and without front-facing sonar. So hands, I'm clapping and praising Trey McKinney for what he did and how he did it. And I was really proud of him and how he composed himself, even though the first 2 days of pressure got to him. He let it all out on the last day, and he did a really, really good job.
And I think you could see that when he was competing. Like, if you look at the first 2 days of competition, he looked very different than the Trey that we're used to seeing. Like, his magic is kind of just to, and whether it's because he's young and I hate this expression, but doesn't know better, because he does, you know what I mean? Like, because he just doesn't, like, nobody's told him you're not supposed to be doing the things you're doing.
Yeah.
But he definitely, you could see he definitely felt pressure. But I felt like as soon as I tuned in, like as soon as I started seeing footage of him on day 3, I'm like, okay, that's more like the way we're used to seeing him fish. He's kind of calm and relaxed. And, the first couple of days you saw him just fishing really fast and really feeling the pressure of the moment, which, hey, it's good to see. Like, it's nice to see that he isn't impervious to pressure. I mean,
he's a competitor. Yeah.
Yeah. He wants it.
And he wanted to win. He's a competitor. And he saw the challenge in front of him. It's Chris Johnston. It's a formidable adversary on the other side of that, working as hard, if not harder or whatever, towards the same goal. And it was like a boxing match in fishing. And and Trey McKinney was fighting a heavyweight title contender, right? The guy holding the belt. And so, I did say, and I will say this, and I did think this. He's young. He's 20 years old. He acts like a 20-year-old sometimes, and I don't mean that critically. He's just young. I mean, I was an idiot at 20 years old, and I'll be the first person to admit it. I wish I could go back and probably take back some of the things that I did when I was 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And so that's there, but you got to give him space, and you got to allow him to be a 20-year-old, because we've all been there, and I'm not saying anything bad, that he did anything stupid or he did anything or said anything derogatory or made any, silly decisions that put any of us in danger or anything like that. I'm 56 years old. When I'm around a 20-year-old, I can tell that I'm around a 20-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's just the way it is. And, perhaps that's why, I don't want to get back on this dead horse again, but, perhaps that's why he gets the criticism that he does. But, his fishing ability, I spent 3 days with that kid, and I'm thoroughly impressed with him. I actually got to spend a little bit of time with his mother. I gave her a hug and told her how proud I am of Trey, and appreciate all the support that she brings to the table. And she was extremely nice and generous to me back. So, kudos to that whole family. They're great.
One of the things that happened, I talked about it on live, but it's funny, it's wild. We live in a world where certain things get picked up and certain things fly under the radar and nobody says anything about them. And sometimes it's some really good things that you're like, am I the only one that just saw that? And I'm sure you picked up on it. Day one, it's takeoff because of we went in with a 2-way tie. They went out in Angler of the Year standings. Trey had the season-long tiebreaker, which is weight on full field days. So Trey had that. So Trey was boat 1 and Chris was boat 2. So there's music playing. It's loud. Every camera on the dock, like the docks almost sank at one point. That's how busy the docks were. It was great.
Yeah.
But we did almost sink several times.
We did.
But there's so much media out there and so much hype and everything. And they're all, let's be honest, on day 1 of the tournament, they are all around Trey McKinney and Chris Johnson because that is the race. That is the Angler of the Year race.
All eyes on them. And
there's a lot of sound and everything. And Chris is in the second boat and he's kind of tuning a buzzbait or whatever. And I watched, and this is not a slight against Chris because he just simply didn't hear him, which is very understandable in that situation. But I watched Trey McKinney 3 times shout back to him, "Good luck, Chris."
Yep.
And he didn't answer. "Good luck, Chris. Good luck." And again, this is not a slight on Chris. It was super loud there. Chris didn't hear him. I'm not saying this, but I'm just saying, like, what world we live in. Like, that's the shit that you think, like, somebody should see this. Like, am I the only one seeing that there's a 20-year-old kid that's on the front of this boat and he's yelling back to a competitor that he's like, it's easy to be a 20-year-old kid that I'm going to show you, old man, you 36-year-old relic.
or just ignore him and not even be concerned about being humble and respectful enough to look back at him and say, and he tried all 3 times. He tried to get a little bit louder. Yeah. And in his defense, it was definitely loud. And Chris wasn't ignoring him. He just didn't hear him.
Yeah, no, but I just think the fact that he did that, and I said that to Davey on the live broadcast, and even Davey said, there's competitors that would say that to you, but to say it 3 times and to, and try. I'm just like, he did this 3 times and nobody, but if he does one thing wrong, the world will be like, did you hear what he just said? Like, there's a lot of goodness in our sport. And I think what's happening with Trey McKinney is pretty cool. And I think you're starting to see like the crowd start to embrace him a lot more. I mean, dude, it's pretty incredible what he's freaking done.
I've heard that from a number of people, and I think, not that this helps or hurts, but I think talking about these kinds of things too, helps him because people don't really know him. They're hating on something that they don't understand or they don't even want to understand. And talking about these kinds of things and bringing out his true personality is really good for him. And I personally like Trey McKinney. Everything that he did, the only thing that I would tell him is go clean up your boat.
Like I would tell my kids.
Yeah.
Tell me about Trey McKinney's filthy boat.
Like, hey son, go clean up your boat right now. Before I step on a hook. But other than that, he is so respectful, constantly asking, "Are you okay?" He loves to drive his boat fast, and so did I. I have a Ford Raptor, and when I'm out on the country roads, I like to drive my truck fast too. I'm 56 years old. When I was 20, I liked to drive fast. And I like to go fast, so it doesn't bother me that he likes to drive fast. I think it's cool. And, those are the only things. Again, I really like Trey, and he was very respectful to me about every single thing. We talked about personal things. We talked about life sometimes. He was open. He can talk and fish. Some people can't talk and fish at the same time. Taku, he likes to talk between fishes.
Yeah.
But when he's fishing and Kyoya, they take their moment, and when they're trying to entice a fish, they're very focused and they get distracted by conversation or noises or imbalances in the boat, whatever it is. Trey can talk and fish at the same time, which is why he liked to listen to music, which he couldn't do because of the royalty rights in music. which was a bit of a distraction for him too. But he can multitask and do two things, at the same time. And I love the kid, man. If he watches this, which he may or may not, I hope he does. Trey, love you, buddy. I was really, really happy to spend 3 days with you. I had a great time. I learned a lot about your character, and I will continue to defend you in all aspects of the sport. Just keep doing what you're doing, buddy.
I've run a Yamaha outboard for over 30 years. It has got me home safe each and every time. If you enjoy this podcast, remember, Yamaha supports it, and they care enough about you to make this ad read very short. Now back to the show.
Yeah, he seems to fish better when he talks. Like when he talks, but if you listen to what he's saying, like it's a lot, but a lot of times, like he was given a total course in what he was doing at St. Clair, the way he was focusing on the angle that he was approaching fish. And I mean, it was just, to me, it's really amazing. But yeah, the music it was the day the music died coming into this tournament. Yeah. And he wasn't the only one that complained about it. KJ Queen was not happy, but I guess, Bass had to be the bad guy. And I understand it. Like it's broadcasted television. You can't just be playing whatever music. They'd love to, but there's rules. So they did send a notice out to the anglers that you can't be just jamming tunes while you're competing. On camera.
Own a bar in Fort Collins, and I have to pay royalty rights to ASCAP and BMI. I pay annual fees for licensing to be able to play the radio or the television in my bar in a commercial environment. So the rule, Bass is right about that. They could they're liable for that if they broadcast it. So understand it. But, Trey said I could put an earbud in if I wanted to, but I like to hear my surroundings while I'm listening to music, because there might be a fish blow up over there or a school of bait fish start schooling over here. And he needs to be able to hear his surroundings. So he chose not to wear the earbud while he was fishing for that very reason, in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah. See, now me, 20-year-old version of me, I'm on every podcast. Bass kept me down, man. They know I like my tunes, and they shut me down. But no, I understand why there's no jamming while you're competing. It makes total sense to me. But no, Trey McKinney had an incredible season. It was an incredible year. There was a lot of great moments throughout the entire year, and
lots of great moments. Even, hey man, the two people that we got to talk about, even if it's briefly, are Pat Schlapper and Lee Livesey. Lee Livesey, for the day that he had to get, he dropped out. I think he dropped out of the classic standing on day one, and then he comes back and catches almost 22 pounds, 21 and 11.
Change,
yeah, on day two to get into day three. And it was a complete flip flop, because I think he had like 10 or 11 pounds on day one, and it literally put him out of the classic contention. And he was like, oh my God. And I remember him leaving at the dock. I went up to his end of the dock. I go, dude, you better go bust their ass today, man. And he goes, I know, dude. And literally I watch Bass Track just like everyone else does on my phone. When I'm on the boat, and I saw him jump, and I'm like, is that right? That was like, he went from like 69th to 6th place. And what an incredible, watching the video clips. I was at the house that he and his team rented, and we were watching. Jesse was playing back the clips from the GoPro that was in his boat, and oh my goodness, that was pretty wild. It would have been really cool to have a live camera in his boat that day.
Yeah, no, he ran on stage. I didn't even get a chance to introduce him. He just was right beside me, and I'm like, I jokingly said, bro, I'm supposed to introduce you. And he goes, and he just hugs me, like didn't even respond to my question, just hugged me and said, I needed this. I just kept saying that. And literally my intro to him, if this is the microphone, I'm like squished up against Lee Livesey, and I'm like, Lee, let us see. Like I didn't do any intro or nothing. Like, but that explains the final event, like the pressure that everybody's got on them.
Exactly.
You cannot slip up. Every year I learned that from Angler of the Year. I remember one of the first guys to point out was Drew Cook. I think it was his rookie season. He was in contention for Angler of the Year, and he had one bad day. And all of a sudden he wasn't in contention for Angler of the Year anymore. You cannot have one bad day. And what a feeling to recover from it. And speaking of recovery, no better recovery to a season than what Pat Schlopper did. I mean, he went from 89th in points halfway through the season to saying the only way I'm going to make the Classic is if I win the final event. Well, he didn't need to win the final event to make the Classic because he changed things at Lake Fork, went and won Sabine River, and then obviously did it in front of his hometown crowd in one of the most awesome celebrations and coolest wins to finish off the season.
Unreal. And he, excuse me, not only this season, but if you go back in time, Pat had struggled. And I remember one time he and I have a mutual friend, that they used to come to the town pump. She used to live here in Fort Collins. She'd come to the town pump all the time, and she's known Pat for years. And so that was my connection to Pat early on when he came into the elites. And so for that very reason, because of our friend Georgia, I had this connection with Pat, and I'm always rooted for him. But in the past couple of years, he has struggled, and he knew that. And I remember oftentimes when I see him, I'll go up to his boat and I'll just wish him luck, whether it's day 1 or day 2 or day 3 or whenever. And I remember him telling me one time that he was like, I don't know what's going on. I can't fix this. I don't know. I'm in a slump. I know I'm a better angler than this. And I've got to figure this out because I'm ready to show the world that I'm actually I'm a legitimate bass fisherman, and I really want to do this. And he was struggling. I don't know where he had landed, in terms of his requalifying to get back into to lose his status with the elites. But at some point it had to be pretty close. And to see him win 2 tournaments this year and to flip that and switch it all over to being a confident guy with all that he's done this year was really, really refreshing. And for him to do that in front of his home crowd and to carry the trophy into the crowd, which you started all that. And I love how that ended, not only for lacrosse, but and bass, but for Pat personally. That was really, really great to see.
Yeah, it was cool to see. I mean, and I think people forget who Pat Schlopper is. Like, I mean, he's won 150 to 200 tournaments at home, but you come and you compete against the best and they're going to beat you down. It's not easy, but Pat Schlopper is, in my opinion, one of the coolest, purest competitors on tour, just in the way that, like, clearly you look at his 2 victories this year, Sabine River and lacrosse. I mean, 2 of the most famous non-forward facing sonar events we've had. He won it on a buzz bait at the first one. And then obviously we saw what he did in lacrosse, but he also is the same guy that came very close to winning Toledo Bend the year before and straight up said on the dock, like, he's got a habit of saying cool things on the final day of competition. Because this year he said, if everybody knew what I was on, the other competitors knew the fish I'm around, they should be scared, which was just such a great line. It wasn't boastful. It was just and it turned out they should have been. But I remember when it was him and Kyoya shooting it out, and I think he was leading going into the final day. And I said, You've got that dude behind you, the best. And they were all forward facing sonar at that point in that tournament. You got one of the best in the world at this. And he looked back at him. He's like, that's exactly how I want it. I have spent the entire offseason learning how to be super proficient with this. And I'm here to beat the best at everything. And I want to be tested. And that's cool to me. Like, somebody to be that open to that, the world needs more Pat Schloppers is what I'm saying.
I totally agree. He is as clear and straight up blue collar. He really isn't in it. He's a competitor, and he's in it for the fishing. He's just that guy, man. I really agree with you. And I remember that day I was in Killia's boat at Toledo Bend, and I remember watching Bass Track and Killia getting behind, and had he not made that decision, he ran out of fish on that point that he was on. Had he not made that decision to go down to this cattail patch where he caught a 6 and a 5, I believe, in 5 or 6 casts, then that tournament, we probably would be talking about Pat as a 3-time winner at the elite level. And good for him. Shields is one of my favorite stores, so we have one right down the road for me. So I always, I don't know, his association to Shields is some sort of a connection for me too. So whatever, good for Pat.
And he worked there. I mean, he worked at Shields.
Yeah.
Like he worked in the tack. I mean, it's cool when you hear a story. I mean, Ike and Ellie had a story like that with Dick's for years. They sponsored him, and he used to work in their tack department. I love the generic kind of, or not generic, organic kind of sponsorships like that. But a great year and a great season of Jake's Takes, Jake Latendresse.
Thank you for having me. Can I mention one more thing?
No, your time is done.
Not at all.
I want to know what's happening with your shirt there. What do you got, a shark on there?
Yeah, it's
Josh.
It's a sushi bar here in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Oh, damn. I want to go to Fort Collins to go to your bar and go to
Dude,
Jaws Sushi.
You and your family are invited to come to Fort Collins. We need to go hang out at the town pump, and I'll treat you to
Jake's Take from
sushi.
the pump.
Let's do it, man.
Oh, it would be awesome. It would be awesome.
That
Okay,
would be
what do you
awesome.
want to talk about? I can't catch up.
Really in detail here. Before I left lacrosse on Sunday night after at weigh-ins, Brandon Polinick and I were talking, and he goes, he had just gotten back into qualifying for the Classic. And he goes, see, the small details matter. That run that we made at St. Clair up the river and caught that fish was probably the deciding factor for me in getting back into the Classic. And he didn't make it last year. So is that right? He would have been 2 years in a row.
First year he missed it.
First year he missed it. And so his point to all of this, and to wrap this whole show up, and the last tournament of the season, it always comes down to details. Even from the very first cast at the very first event to the very last cast of the very last event, all the details matter.
Yeah, little things. And that's a big one. Like, that run was
huge,
and he caught a giant fish. But you think of how, like, our Angler of the Year race with Trey McKinney, he finished 89th in Florida, I think it was. Yeah. Dude, nobody talks about, and think they lost Angler of the Year by like 20 points or whatever it was. Well, dude, that 89th, one bite different in Florida. You turn that 89th into a 69th, and then all of a sudden,
it's a different conversation.
You got a different Angler of the Year. I think it was a cool Angler of the Year race too, in the way that, like, you had Trey, who had made a bunch of top 10s, and then you had Chris, who made none, but he also never finished below 31st.
Never made a top 10 the entire year. That's incredible.
Some people on the internet don't like it, though. They need a new system for calculations.
Consistency, man. Consistency
it's points.
Matters.
Yeah, points matter, and the system is the most pure system there is. Like, you get 100 points if you win, and you get 1 point if you finish last. Like, it's pretty simple. Simple arithmetic.
Every Saturday that you say goodbye to anglers on the stage that don't make the Sunday cut, they almost always say, "Hey, man, I gained some valuable points," and we take all that for granted. But at the end of the day, they're looking at that like those points matter, and just like you're saying, every point matters, every decision matters, every cast matters, every fish that comes off at the boat matters. All that stuff matters. And that's why when you follow Bassmaster Elites or the Opens or whatever it is, tournament fishing, that's why people that follow it from start to finish love this sport so much. That's why we love this sport so much, because everything about it matters.
Jake Latendresse, you matter, and so does Jake's take.
Thanks for letting me matter.
Oh, you mattered without me. I mean,
As a matter of fact, I love your hat. I want one.
I'll get you one. It's a Berkeley hat. I will make sure to send you one. I'll tell you what, I'll send you one as long as you bring me to Jaws Sushi. I can plow some sushi.
Hey, you have an open invitation. Bring your whole family. I've got plenty of space in my house. We can sit right back there at that bar and have drinks after we leave the town pump and after we eat sushi. So come on out. Anytime, buddy. Anytime. We'll go to Red Rocks.
Oh God, well, I want it. I have bucket list. I got to go to a concert there at some point.
I have to.
I thought I was going to go to Whiskey Myers. Yeah, they'll be back, I'm sure.
I hope so. They gave up their weekend. I mean, when you give up your weekend, they didn't play this year at Red Rocks. And when you give that space up, then they put another, because there's bands waiting
every
in
weekend
line.
That place is jammed.
Every weekend.
Wow.
There's not every weekend that place is jamming. And whether it's rap, country, southern rock, they have movie nights there. They have big bands, music festivals. Red Rocks jams every single weekend between late April all the way into late October.
Is there a lake nearby Red Rocks?
There's actually a lake called Aurora Reservoir that's got some giant smallmouth in it.
Let's throw it out in the universe. Bassmaster Elite Series weigh-in at Red Rocks.
No, it'd have to be like that. That would be a good place for like a Legends tournament.
Okay, whatever.
It's a small lake. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to go to Red Rocks and hang out.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Thanks, dude.
Thank you, buddy.
So that's it. That's all. Great conversations with great people. And I thank you, great people, for tuning in. As I said earlier, kind of rushing through these intros and extras because guess what? I'm going fishing. And if anybody on earth understands that, it is you guys. I thank you for watching each and every week. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things that help stroke the algorithm. And I'll see you next week. Until then, enjoy being. And as always, Bob Cobb, take it away.
Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe because Bob Cobb of the Bassmasters told you to. You hear?